Well, I'm excited today. If you've ever ridden down Keith Street, have you ever thought about where did it get its name? We're going to find out today. I've got Keith Hines. I'm really looking forward to it, and we're going to unpack it. It's going to be a great discussion. Let me ask you this. Is it uncommonly warm out there right now? I mean, it was, 30 degrees Friday?
Indeed.
And then now,
It's 50s. And
50s?
it's comfy. I mean, when Doris doesn't need a scarf around or anything, and she's getting in and out of the car and not saying, oh, it's good.
Whenever you read a story in the newspaper or see something on television about somebody getting arrested, you naturally assume they're guilty. Unless the story's about you or someone you love, then you'll think differently. And you'll want a lawyer who will defend you. My name's Scott Canavis. If you or someone you love has been charged with a crime, call me. I'll return your phone calls, I'll work on your case, and I will defend you.
I've got this cat out here that is a stray cat, but it's been living here for 15 years or 10 years. And I can tell when it's going to be warm because the day, when I come in here around 9, if it's going to be a nice sunny day, it will go on outside to lay in the sun. He knows it before we know it, that it's going to be a warm sunny day. Now, how do they know that?
They are attuned to Earth.
It is the most ironic thing. I mean, it's just bizarre. I don't know how they have an inner compass or something.
Earthquakes, what have you. You know, you always hear about it. Mm-hmm. And then we've got birds there at the house. All of a sudden, when there's a front about to come in, they're just all around trying to get water, trying to get feed. And you're like, they know something's up.
There's something about animals that we don't, that we just hadn't figured out yet. I mean, I know they say they do it, but what makes them do it? It's just really strange. And it'll come in here, and I can tell how it meows if it wants water or food.
Now, that's interesting.
It's a deeper voice if it wants water.
Is that right?
It's just the
I'm
craziest
glad
thing.
you paid attention.
And it's not an affectionate cat. You know, it's not like wants to rub up against you. It doesn't do that at all. It's just different personalities for cats.
So he says, Dee, I'm here for this, and you understand.
He'll come right there, and I'll follow him, and he'll take me either to the water or to the food, but I know which one he's going. He knows where I keep the food.
How neat.
You got any animals?
Not now. We just have our outside birds. And they're a lot easier to maintain.
Have you ever read that book on when you see certain birds, certain things are happening or have happened? It's really bizarre.
I have not.
It says like when you see two red cardinals.
Oh.
Or when a cardinal flies in front of you, that's someone that's died recently telling you that they're okay. And I don't mean flying here. It's got to be flying in front of you. And it'll happen nearly every time. Because you don't see cardinals flying in front of you.
No, sir. Wow. It is interesting, animals.
You know, speaking of that, what is this picture?
That is a photo.
Can you get this, Gwen? Well, that's a good photo. I guess that was retouched, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was retouched, cleaned up, and blown up.
About what year would that have been?
It had to be in the lady right here is Carrie Johnston.
Carrie Johnston.
She is the lady, the that passed the house that we live in now from her mom and dad, Robert Emmett and Caroline Tucker Johnston, built the home in 1880. She was one of the 4 kids, and she never got married. She lived there. And when she passed away, she gave it to my grandmother, who in turn gave it to my aunt after she passed away, who in turn gave it to me.
So this lady here, Carrie, she was married to whom?
No one.
Who was her father?
Robert Emmett Johnston.
And Robert Emmett Johnston came from?
He was actually from North Carolina, but his, I believe, great-grandfather passed back. There is Joseph Johnston, who came here from Virginia and through the Carolinas and bought 8 or 10 plantations between Sweetwater and Chattanooga. And one of them is where we are. And the other closest one, and it's the only other ones I know about, is Summerfield, the Bendabout.
Which maybe they still have it from then.
Oh, absolutely. It's just been passed down. And the tract that we're on, the house that we have now, is just an acre and a third. And prior to that, when Joseph Johnston bought the properties from the Indians in the 1790s, if you know where Fairview and Gulf Street is, right off of South Lee, it goes up to Silver Maple, and that kind of ends up there. And that ridge, or that would be the south end of the property, and it goes down to Mouse Creek. And it runs that ridge that up behind Cleveland Country Club, what it used to be. Our family sold that to the club. And then it continues on up to Willow Street. And so the 2 properties, which are now, you know, of Annandale subdivision, that was formed by our family, and it butts up against Everhart. So that ridge line is where it was, and then it goes down Willow, down to Mouse Creek. That was one track.
Do you think those plantations were the 640 acres? You know how they had, you know, that was.
It.
But if they bought it from the Indians in the 1790s, you say?
Yes, sir. It's my understanding from.
So that would have been prior to the 1838 of moving the Indians out. So
Yes, sir.
So he actually, I guess, maybe legitimately bought it from the Indians.
I sure hope so.
I guess.
I sure hope so.
Because that was about 50 years prior.
Yes,
But
sir.
we'll wonder where he had all that kind of money, or was it just cheap as water right now?
He did make his fortune, and they were talking about shipping. They came from Scotland.
So they're Scottish.
Yeah, Scottish, Irish.
Scot-Irish.
Mainly Scottish. So that's where Annandale's name comes. It came from Annandale, Scotland. And so they came
There's a
over
castle there, isn't there?
There is on the Keith side of the family, which is my father's side.
All right. So now, do you think so? So they came. He came over here from Scotland, I guess. What year would that have been? That had been the 1700s or something.
Yes, sir. He was born, I think, in the earlier 1725 or so. Again, I'm not real good with all the dates and all the names and all the places they've come through.
So they came in and came through the Alleghenies, as they called them at the time.
Yeah. Virginia is one place that a lot of them did settle, other Johnstons, my understanding.
But 10 plantations, Lord.
All to each of the sons.
How far did that range?
I wonder, I'd love to see, and I've never really heard of where the others were. I know he was buried up in the Loudoun County area, Joseph was, but I wish I would know, to know.
Were you telling me that he owned basically from Sweetwater to Chattanooga at one time?
Like it does.
Yeah, it does.
There was very little going on in between, was there?
There wasn't nothing.
There wasn't even an iota, was there?
No,
No,
or
I should
Philadelphia.
say-
What did they call it?
That's
Philadelphia.
Right. Or Riceville, we don't know. No, there was communities all up and down.
What was his occupation?
I couldn't tell you. I really don't know. It never really, what the documents I've been able to observe, and it didn't really say.
Well, he would have. So your, I guess, lineage, sort of, what you can go back through is Carrie then in this picture.
Yes, sir. That was so nice to have that. And then,
And where did you find this?
oh, it's been on our stairway for all my life.
Lord, she put that there.
Well, that's her home, yeah.
And so you're just looking at it, and you're not even paying that much attention to it until one day you think, oh, what is it? Now, who else was supposed to be in the picture?
You know, that's,
There it is.
yes. Now,
I bet
these-
there's some names on here. So let's say, about what year would this have been? If she
I'd
she
say-
looked about 20.
I'd say about 1890-ish, 95.
1895.
Could be
So,
1900.
so we got Ethel McGear, Maria Serquin, May Horner, which could be related to some of the Dr. Horners,
I bet.
Clyde. Does it say Clyde?
Yes,
Hardwick? I
yeah.
don't see a man there, though.
No, it's a lady.
Maybe that was the name then.
Yeah.
Something Johnson, Boris Johnson,
I believe that's it.
Annabelle Hardwick, Carrie Johnston, Mamie Hotcher, Reverend Reese Henley, Lillian Mayfield, that name's got to sound familiar, and Annie Aiken. Now, what would these people be telling us today if they were living?
I would love to know. I would love to know. And we've had people look at the background trying to determine, was it a setting, a formal setting, or was it just...
And
at
she's
a
in black.
home? And yes, a widow.
And they all had hats,
Oh, they were just beautiful.
and those were hats like they have on Gunsmoke.
How about that?
So I'm going to say Gunsmoke was supposed to be set in the 1860s.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
theoretically,
I'm trying to recall what her year now. I think it was just a few years after 1880 that she was born.
1880. Well, that'd
Yeah,
been
so-
about right, wouldn't it?
1875. Thank you.
Aha.
Very
Uh-huh.
good. That's where it was, 1875. Very good.
So now where did the Johnstons come into this mix?
Which
Like Summerfield Johnston. Does he come in the mix?
Oh, absolutely. Funny thing about Summerfield, my oldest sister was 3 years old. She was born in 1940. And she was there at the house, and we sat on the front porch most all the time. And she saw this gentleman pull in the driveway, and out he gets, and most gentlemen then all had a hat. He had a white shirt unbuttoned, but just a white shirt, jeans, and boots that had certainly been out in the field. And he moseys on up and was welcomed greatly by my grandmother and aunt, and we're sitting there, and after he left, they stayed a while. My oldest sister said, "We have another gentleman trying to find some help from us, some money." Little did they know at the time, and she learned later, but anyhow, Summerfield, they would come and visit.
I've got a friend of mine, and I don't know which one of the Summerfields he's talking about, whether it was the father, the grandfather, or what. But he said he went to a dance when he was a teenager, and they said that he was going to be there, and And he said he looked around, he couldn't see anybody that looked like they would be him. And he kept looking and never, and finally he said, when's he gonna be here? And he said, well, that's him right there. And he said they pointed to a guy that had a cowboy boots on that were worn on an angle. Just as common, maybe even less common. Because, you know, he said he remembered his, they were like angled, you know, like some people may walk with a little different gimp or something.
Wow, be darned.
Isn't it funny that you just never know by looking at somebody anything?
No, sir. People with big overalls, you think, poor guy, and he'll pull out of water like to choke you. Isn't it?
Yeah.
He could.
You just never know.
No, sir. And see, like Summerfield's name is part of Annandale subdivision, just like Thomas and James and on around there. So it's like, you know, they like to use names, and that's another thing. Emmett and what have you.
Yeah, Emmett Avenue. That's
Yes,
right, Emmett
right.
Avenue.
It's right there at the end of our driveway.
And so Carrie gave property to Cleveland for Keith Street.
Actually, her niece,
Which
is May Beard Stamper.
Oh.
And May was my grandmother that passed it to my aunt, who passed it to us here. So May was actually, in 1955, the city approached her and wanted to see if she could help this community by opening a bypass around downtown. Can you imagine downtown handling?
Oh,
but
yeah,
anyhow,
right.
it just couldn't.
Yeah.
So it started there at South Lee, where it veered off, in Keith Street. And it was almost a mile long.
If you measured a mile from there, it would take you about halfway down Keith Street, I guess. You know, probably about even where you're talking about Willow. That's probably the mile.
Yes, that's where it stopped. And I can recall before then, it was just pasture. There was livestock roaming around there. And it was, when I was...
What's your earliest recollection
of
living there?
Well, I spent summers there, is what it amounted to. I was born in Knoxville. And I would come down here at a young age. I was in the first grade, I think. I had what was called Perthes disease. Perthes disease. It's where your hip socket isn't growing along with your body. So it won't allow your leg to grow. And in turn, I had to be on crutches for about 2 years. But I was the fastest dude around on 3 legs. So there was like a harness or strap around, I buckle up here, and I had a stirrup, and it was my right leg, and it stayed off the ground for 2 years to allow it to grow.
So the Perthes disease was just a temporary condition.
It was solved, whereas some people that didn't know they had it, you see people with a large boot out on their shoe. That's
or even maybe some people with just a little bit.
That's right.
You know, it might not have been that. So what was it like going to school with crutches? Where did you go to school?
At Bearden in Knoxville.
Oh.
But in the summer, I feel like what they were trying to do is keep me low key. So I'd come down here and I'd stay all summer. And I did that all the way through high school. Each summer I'd come down here. I loved it. Had a lot of good friends, had a lot of good friends at other places I lived as well. But I loved this place. I loved the property. I walked it all the time growing up. There was 75 acres of mainly undeveloped when I was growing up. Big old mule barns.
Was there a Georgetown Road? Did it dead end to that?
It sure did. And it was at one time it was called First Street, is what it was called. And then it was renamed Harrison Pike.
So First Street would have been what we know as Central Avenue, maybe, I guess.
Well,
Carried on
yeah,
through.
where Inman comes down and first comes in.
Yep.
And then it comes to Keith, and then it goes into Harrison Pike.
You have a picture of that?
I do not, I don't think. I might.
I might have seen it one of those.
Oh,
here.
really?
Yeah.
What was
Right
it?
there.
Oh, this is Annandale.
Okay.
That's right. And what this is Harrison Pike going out towards Jackson Farm.
All right.
And that's that
that,
ridge
Gwen.
right up here. And actually, these
So what's this right here?
these are some of the houses.
I mean,
is-
this fork.
Okay, that I believe is where James, or no, let me think. Thomas Avenue comes
Thomas
into
Avenue.
Summerfield, I believe is where that is. And then Harrison is right there.
So that's what it. Boy, they'd roll over in their grave if they saw it right now,
How
wouldn't they?
about that? I mean, it developed well. It sure did.
Mm-hmm.
So our house was back up here, and there's a strip, an irregular strip. Do you remember Frank Miles with American uniform?
Wasn't he a pilot?
I don't think, no, he was
That was
involved.
Maury Miles' dad.
Oh, was it?
I think his son's name's Frank.
Okay, well, now his house was built right up here at the end of Pryor Drive. And that was part of a property at one time. But there's a side of a hill that Harrison Pike's here, and there's that little creek. Mm-hmm. And then there's a side of a hill, and up top is Pryor, and there's Frank's house up there, and others. Country Club
Drive goes up behind it.
Yeah, the point, a country club comes off of Harrison, and there's like a pie shape, goes up, side of a hill. I still pay $16 a year for city and county tax. Nobody, I don't know, I just, sentimental reasons.
How big is it?
I would say it's a half acre, maybe 3/4, something like that. They don't even put the acreage, they just say irregular.
Right, yeah.
But it's always, I guess when they were doing all the selling of lots and what over time, they just didn't think about it.
Do you remember there being a swimming pool over there somewhere that's been filled in?
Oh, that's just past us, right before you turn into Everhart.
On the left.
Yes, sir. And they filled it in.
What was that? Whose swimming pool was that?
That's a good question. I don't recall. There was a house back up in there, the best I remember.
I remember driving by there. Why I remember
How
this,
about that?
I have no idea. But I remember driving by there, and my dad said, that's where the rich people swim.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's all I remember.
Isn't
I
that
don't
something?
remember nothing else, but I bet I'm one of the few people besides you that remembers there was a swimming pool there. So
Yes,
I
sir.
do remember something about it.
I'll be darned. And I do
And
not
I don't know
recall.
why he said rich people, but that's what he said. You know,
Well, there weren't many pools around, I guess.
I guess so.
Yeah. Man, there was that little stream that comes down through there.
Mm-hmm.
That forms the spring house that's always been there, and it's still there, even with the apartments that are built there. They kept the spring house, just a...
Did
really-
Jimmy Isom live there?
Who?
Jimmy Isom, was he the...
Oh, he lives actually in what was Morgan Johnston's house, which was a cousin of my grandma, and she sold the property to him in I think the late 40s or so. And Jimmy bought that. My aunt had that passed to her from Johnny Johnston. That was Morgan's son. Mm-hmm. She received that house, and I'm going to say 2000, late 1999, something in that
Somewhere in
area.
I remember.
Yeah, and Jimmy bought that, and I was so glad to see him because Johnny had the house. It was just, he was a bachelor and never had married, and he passed away. And you're talking about a historian. I wish he was sitting right here.
He could
That
tell it.
gentleman,
He'd have
oh
so
my-
much he could.
We kept saying, Johnny, we're going to get a tape recorder and we're going to we'll just have it here. Because we'd have him up and we'd take him up Parksville on the boat and different things. And
What was he like?
he was very quiet. He went every Sunday to St. Luke's here. He'd go on Sunday, but he wouldn't tithe until Monday morning
Now why?
because he loved walking to town.
That
Of
gave
course,
him something to do.
It gave him something to do, and he lived in that. It was a good-sized house.
Maybe he wanted to make sure the preacher didn't disagree with the preacher.
I wonder, you know. But Johnny was a very unique person, but by golly, he knew his history. And he'd just come up and he'd say, you were up in Ashtabula, Ohio. We moved there one time. He said the population there is 32,000. And he knew the county name. He would just study anytime. And we moved again to Indiana, and I got all the information I needed about where I was living at that time. So
What part of Indiana was that during the...
when I lived there, it was just north of Terre Haute. It was called Clinton, Indiana.
How far is that close to Evansville?
That's south. That's almost to the river. So you go through there from here. We would go up through there on 41. They didn't have interstates back then. So when we lived up there, trucking back and forth, and it was like any time there was a vacation, it was here or Madisonville. Well, really, we did both in Madisonville, where my dad grew up. So in Knoxville, come down here, Madisonville. Indiana, same thing. And Ohio for the couple of years up there, Ashtabula, Ohio, right on Lake Erie. And Dee, when they said it's going to snow, by golly, it snowed. They didn't use the term snow, lake effect snow. They just said it's going to snow. It started in November, and my dad was on call all the time where he was working, and he said, Buster, you mind going out and start shoveling? Because everybody had a garage outside and an alleyway in the back separating. I go out and I get it done, come back in. He said, Buster, go back out. First snowfall, 18 inches. I loved it. As a kid, you know, my gosh, building igloos.
Oh, yeah.
Getting your dog to learn how to get a rope to a sled and have him call down the other end. He'd fly down through there. Go walk out on Lake Erie. My gosh, the ice was all with the wave action. Come in and you could walk out a quarter of a mile or so on Lake Erie.
Is that where they do some ice skating on it? Or is that somewhere else?
Somewhere else, I think. Yeah. But it was just north of Cleveland, right before Erie, Pennsylvania, is where that was located. So every place I've been has been great. Just learning, and like that Clinton, Indiana, they call it Little Italy. And it's still only about 7,000 people there.
Mostly Italians, I guess?
Oh, are you kidding? My goodness. But it was funny because back when Chicago was having problems having any kind of alcohol, Little Italy made their own wine. So guess who kept coming down there and bringing it back?
Pisano's.
Absolutely. There were so many neat people in that community. And you talk about good restaurants, it wasn't bigger than right here. It'd seat a few people, but about every corner would have a nice meal there. And the people there are just great.
Isn't it funny that people seem to flock together with people they can community with, like a birds of a feather flock together, that old saying?
Back to your animals there, isn't it? It sure is.
Yeah, that's right. That is back to the animals, isn't it?
Yeah.
I never have really fully understood it. Birds of a feather, because I think they used to refer to birds as birds of a feather.
Yes.
It wasn't like they're feathers, but that's how they classified them or something.
It is. It sure is.
When you came back to Cleveland, see, you don't look that old.
76.
76. My dad's 70. Well, he might be 80 now. So you got a good head of hair.
I'm just fortunate. What can I say? I'm still about 18 here and about that here, but the parts aren't working quite the same. But in theory.
So you feel like you could go?
I try to.
But do you think you can in your mind?
Yeah, there's a few things I feel like I could get back to, but yeah, sir. And I don't know. I didn't have kids till I was almost 40. a son and a daughter, 3 years apart. And I think that kind of helped me get, like, I'm not growing old. I have to keep up with all these wrestlers.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, because if you'd had kids at 20,
Yeah, like a lot of people
Yeah.
do, and that's normal. Yeah.
then you sort of feel like that you're almost, I think that is true. The people that had kids later feel younger. I
just
bet kids keep you younger.
Well, we're fortunate. Between Doris and I, we have 5 kids. We have 8 grandkids. And we have 7 great-grandkids.
Golly.
And there's some birthday or some celebration going on all the time, isn't there? But it's all good. And they're all just beautiful people. They really
Doris looks like that Archie Bunker's daughter. What was her name?
I don't know.
I can't
Remember
recall-
Archie Bunker?
Oh, absolutely.
All in the Family?
Sally's brother.
Sally Struthers, yeah, but at her age, what was her?
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't recall.
You could pull her picture up and you'd think she was here. What was her name?
Oh,
I
good
can't think.
question.
It's just left me.
I'm glad you're that way too, because I'll lose a lot up there. Maybe it's too packed out.
I think
Maybe.
that's it, and it's not. It's that you're not that interested in it to remember it, but you do remember that you remembered it.
See there? That's a
I
good
think
point.
that's all it is.
I
It's
need
just
to write that down, because that makes sense.
yeah, you're just not that interested because things you're interested in, you know. My grandmother wrote a poem that says, "I don't know this and I don't know that, but I know that and I know that,"
Wow.
because that's what I'm interested in.
It all makes sense, doesn't it?
I don't know if you knew her, Laverne Owenby.
I did not.
She was. So what was it when you had crutches? You were for 2 years, like first and second grade,
Yes, sir.
and no problems.
Not for me. Everybody, like I say, I think I was shielded more. And I had 2 sisters older and 1 younger even. And I think they kind of helped nurture me and make sure I wouldn't get him. Because I stayed trying to climb trees, do anything I could.
Almost like Forrest Gump.
How about that? That's a good
Have you ever thought about that?
No, sir.
That might have been what he had.
Where I threw them away.
Yeah.
I don't know what that rascal had.
What was it like coming back to Cleveland? Who were some of your friends when you came during the summers?
Oh, well, Tom Jones, Stan Martz, Judy
I know
Chandler.
Stan.
Yeah. I haven't seen him in years,
I
but
hadn't
Judy
either.
Chandler, Judy Hooper.
Yeah, is that Brackett's?
Oh, yeah. Brackett Marie lived across the pasture, and he ran his cattle there. And if my grandmother or aunt needed anything,
Call Brackett.
or Marie, or Judy, or Larry, her brother, right there.
You know, one time I used to eat breakfast with Brackett and
Oh,
a couple
Liar
other people
Club.
at the Liars Club. And one morning, I had lost my dog, couldn't find it. And he said, "Where you live, Dee?" You know, he had that finger that was cut off. And
Yeah.
he'd always push his glasses up with that finger.
Absolutely.
And he said, "Where you live at, Dee?" And I said, "Oh, I live up on Frontage Road." Would you believe, he didn't say another word. Would you believe that afternoon I saw him driving down Candy's Creek Ridge Road in that white cat, was it a Cadillac he had?
We had a lot of Bonneville's and
A
Pontiacs.
Pontiac. It was a white,
Yeah.
a big one.
Oh,
Didn't,
yeah.
It didn't suit him.
Was it a convertible?
Nope.
Okay.
But it didn't
Yeah.
suit him. You know, that big car. And anyway, I pulled over on the side of the road and I said, "Brackett, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm looking for your damn dog."
I swear.
Now, why he would do that, I don't know.
Man.
I mean, just a passing
yeah.
mention.
Yeah.
And he was there that afternoon
How about it?
looking for my dog.
And you found it?
It came home later, but
That's
but
all right.
but
Just the idea.
just the fact that he was out driving down Candy's Creek,
Get him.
which meant he had already been down Frontage
My
and gone
goodness.
over to Candy.
Yes, sir.
And he wouldn't have made that up. You know, that's what he was doing if it's what he said.
What a character. I tell you, that he
Isn't his
Marie-
house still there? Remember, he lived in that little house?
Well, Country Club Drive.
Oh, well, towards the end, he lived on Harrison Pike.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. I passed the rich man's swimming pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had that house. Right past that was Nanny Guerin's house. And then Brackett and Marie bought that house, gosh, I can't even tell you when. But they lived on Country Club Drive. It's no longer there. It's all apartments on there as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, he got my first horse, brought in a saddle for it, you know, and had a good time. On Sundays was a big day to ride horses. It was in the pasture, and yeah, he always had good horses.
Who else do you run around with during those times?
Well, there was, Gray Everson was one.
Oh,
of
is
them.
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're about Gray's age. He
Yeah.
might be a year older than you.
Something like
Yeah.
that. And it was just, we'd always go wherever. Always go wherever. Enjoying Parksville and Ocoee River. We used to float down on our backs, not in the bad rapids,
Yeah.
but just in different areas, and Broken Rock up there, right where the Whitewater Museum got
Yeah.
burned down. But there's an area there that had holes that you could swim
The Blue
through.
Hole.
Well, there's that one too.
Oh.
But the rocks had formations that had little tunnels right near that, and we call it Broken Rock.
Oh.
But everybody else could have called it Blue Hole. But what's neat, both of my kids got it, and my daughter still does.
Oh, is still? Who's she work for up there?
Well, she for the longest time Quest, and then last year she was with RAF 1, and then she does mercenary as well. But she also got it out in Colorado, and on the NOLA Chucky, and up in Pennsylvania. She's pretty darn good.
Evidently.
And then Tripp, my son, worked for Ocoee Inn for a while, and unfortunately, they were loading boats on top of the bus, and he was pulling up, and they kind of let go at the bottom, and along with that, he came down on his head and his arm, and they just about lost him. And he had to have surgery. He didn't have an elbow to speak of. He was just pulverized. But the next year, he still wanted to guide some, and he did. But he continued going to school and school and school, and now he's a neurosurgeon
Golly.
in Florence, South Carolina.
Florence, South Carolina.
And it's funny because my other cousin, Robert Hines, I bet you don't know him. Robert Hines was a neurosurgeon as well, but he
In Virginia.
No, sir. He was actually up in East Tennessee, there in Johnson City.
Oh.
He had the Appalachian Neurosurgeon Group, and then, but that was interesting because he just loved guiding too.
If he had, do you think that when he hurt his arm that maybe that caused him to go on to school and maybe he'd have kept rafting or guiding?
He was actually in school at Clemson, and he got his chemical engineering degree there. And then he worked for Savannah River Company, where they store nuclear waste and what have you. And after a year, he noticed all the people working there were doing about the same thing he was, and I can't take this. So he decided to get into the medical field and applied 1 year, didn't make it, and he went as, got training as CNA, worked at Erlanger for a year, reapplied, got into up there at Quellen Medical School, and then went 4 years there, and then 7 years residence at UK in Lexington. And then now he's been 2 years in South Carolina.
Well, what a neurosurgeon does.
Well, right now he does anything that involves the brain, the spine, but he also has gotten into deep brain surgery, which you see people with Parkinson, strokes, and this is an attempt to cure that from one day to the next. Some of his patients, and it's not all patients are able to get that treatment and walk away without a problem. But one day you have a guy that can't eat. Next day,
Is that
after
right?
that surgery, Yes, sir. So that has...
Is this a new type of surgery?
It's been, yes, sir. Dr. Van Horn there in Lexington at the hospital had been working on it, and Tripp started really getting involved with it and liking it. He liked the immediate results. And stroke victims as well.
Wonder what they do in there to change that.
There's a stimulus that's placed kind of like a pacemaker and that type of thing in there that stimulates a signal, you might say. But you got to know where to put it. But yeah, he's
So it's not like taking something out or changing something. They're putting something in there
Yes, sir. To aid.
that mechanically or electrically
Yes, sir.
changes that.
Yeah. So it's funny how all that just came together. But he just had a good growing up, and so did Maggie, and so did Doris, and a lot of her kids, and all of our other great kids and all, just enjoying life.
What was your main occupation?
Well, I was going to school to get into vet school. Never got into vet school. I moved here in '73 and got into banking. I started at Merchants Bank there.
Let's see now, who was at Merchants Bank in '73?
Well, Bobby Taylor was
Bobby Taylor.
Yeah, and it went on down from there, all the different ones.
Dixon.
Yes, sir.
Wasn't Dixon one?
I believe so. And then after a while, I was talking to George Thorogood about future in banking and what have you. And he said, let me talk to American National there in Chattanooga. So I went there and stayed there for a while. So it was in the late '70s when I did not do that anymore and stayed here in town. So that's kind of how that started. And since then, I've done a few different things. But one of the most gratifying was being an adjunct teacher at Cleveland State.
What's adjunct mean?
Part-time.
Okay.
So I was working full-time at Sears Hamilton Place from '90 to 2003. But in about that time, I started, they asked me to come there to see if I could help. And I started teaching in the different science, anatomy, biology, whatever they needed. And I did that for 13 years as well. And then along with that, I did mowing. So I had people, 25 years I did that. I started doing it years ago, just helping our own properties. And then people say, have you got time to come by? And I had one lady, Janie Arms, who actually introduced Doris and I years ago when she found out
Gloria Bunker.
Oh,
Gloria, Gloria.
See?
Yeah, it came to me.
So that's...
if you were going to pick out a job that you could do and you could make a living at it, mowing would be top number one, wouldn't it?
It's gotten flush around here, hasn't it?
But I mean, if you said, okay, what job do you going to do if you can make the same or not have whatever problems go with that? I'm sure there are. But to me, mowing was always fun, riding the mower.
Yeah. Just looking back and seeing, I got that done, you
can listen to the radio a little bit and feel like you're doing something. And
yeah. I always liked large, heavy equipment as well when I could, and, big bush hogs and what have you, but mowers and all, and I did it all myself. I had, just twice I had help for a day or two, and I just soon do it myself, so.
You seem like the kind of guy that would just rather handle it yourself, whatever it is.
Well, I like it a certain way, and I'm sure you do too, and when you're through, you want it to be just as good as it can be.
And I don't want any problems, do you?
No, and
I don't want problems.
People can't really help it, but they tear up stuff. I tear it up too.
Yeah.
That's the only thing, yeah.
And customers' expectations are always different than...
It can be.
You think people have false memories? You ever wondered about that?
I know.
Like false memories of things that... You ever talk to somebody and then the week later they said, no, it happened like this, and you think, oh,
How'd that happen?
How did they come up with that? What happened with both there at the same time?
Well, it just has. It sure does. So I could set this down and you could say, I didn't hear that. And I'd say, I heard that.
You ought to
Is that
say
right?
I was telling Gwen before y'all came in something. He said, you told me that last week.
Oh.
And I had no idea that I told him that last week.
I swear.
So that sort of thing happens.
But you want to make sure that he heard it.
I guess, yeah.
That's it.
And
You
it's
want-
good that he remembered. If not, we'd be both.
Oh, my golly. I know it. We kid each other about going to the other room and what the heck? I think an app, don't you think an app that everybody could have? You say, what was I going after? And they would know.
Well, that would be good.
Just a thought.
That would be good.
It might be better than post a note. I don't know.
You know that, but that don't really. I don't think that is a dementia or Alzheimer's. I don't. Because you can't. That sort of stuff happens all the
Yeah, it
time.
does.
I'll come in here to get something and forget what I went to get and go back and come back. I'll do that a couple. Hey, I was going to build this people's house one time. They was wanting to meet me to talk about building their house, and I was driving down the road and I forgot to turn in. So I turned around, came back, forgot again. I did that 6 times,
No.
and they were sitting on the front porch watching me drive by.
Now, Dee, that might be
I
little different.
I just got my mind on something, and
Boy,
I
did.
still got the job.
You should. But see, I think there's so many things you're trying to think of, and so in between here and there, there's still all that mind's just working, and it's okay.
Especially driving.
Yes.
For some reason.
Yeah, but 6 times?
6 times.
You might have a
and
record.
they watched me go by.
A true record. Does Guinness still do these things?
Dennis.
Guinness Book of Records.
Oh yeah, that'd be a good one, wouldn't
Something
it?
to talk about. But anyhow.
Who do you think you get your personality from?
Well,
What relative?
I'd say my mom seemed to, and my dad, I mean, both of them it was friends all the time. There's one example in Knoxville. My dad was at work. He came home, I think, for lunch for something, and there's all these chain gang with the sheriff and everybody up in our driveway, and they all had coffee. And she just started saying, boys, do y'all need some coffee or something? I mean, they're out there working, and it was on the street.
Yeah.
It didn't matter who it was. She just enjoyed seeing people, Maybe that's it, I don't know. But it seemed like most of my family on both sides just enjoyed people. And
So you don't think it's a kindness as much as it just enjoying people?
yes, sir, it's like my Uncle Bob here in Cleveland, the dentist, Doc Hines.
Yeah, Dr. Hines.
Yeah, who's was here. He just loved storytelling, always had people around, and always into something. And then his son, Ronald Hines, was a dentist also. And so, yeah.
He married Bambi Hines, right?
Yes,
Is
sir.
that right?
Right before Doris and I, yes, sir. Well, it was funny, April 24th, Doris goes in to get a cleaning with Bambi. And she said something about, we're getting ready to go out and for an anniversary. And I can't remember if it was Doris or Bambi said, well, that's our anniversary. So we shared that, but catch this. Trib, my son, and his wife, Abby, when they were finishing medical school there, getting ready to get their residence, to get married, they only had a short window from where they were there in Johnson City to where both of them might be going. The only date was April 24th. So go figure. But
That's a big date for y'all. It's 3 different times.
That's wild, yeah. So interesting.
Do you think that do you enjoy the differences in different people's personalities? I mean, do you see the textures and personalities?
I do. I don't like drama, though. I'm not big on people that have any kind of big drama all the time.
You mean baggage?
I don't know if it's baggage or just their attitudes maybe. I try to lift up or at least get a smile out of some people that are just like that all. I don't like seeing people like that. I'd rather see them, at least a little smile or something. What's so bad?
You mean not if they have a crisis, but just in a general?
In general, just run into them and, and it's whatever. But yeah, I'd rather see your heads up than down.
Do you think that those people that are drama, they can bring you down, can't they? Boy, they can bring you down.
Yeah. I mean, you have to empathize with them at times and sympathize with them as well. But, yeah, you just hate that they're having troubles.
You ever listen to that on the radio in the morning? They got that series they call First World Problems.
No, sir.
And people call in with what they call first world problems versus third world problems.
Really?
And it's kind of a funny thing, but people call in and it'll say something like the electric. Well, one guy called in and said you'd think I would expect more out of a 5-star hotel. Oh. In other words, first world problems is you're at a 5-star hotel already.
Yes,
or like my electric blanket went bad, so I had to turn my heat up.
Oh,
that's
dear.
a first world problem.
Yes, sir.
Not a third world problem.
Man, that makes sense, doesn't it?
But
What channel is that, or what station?
It's 96.5. They don't play music no more. They do all this
Yeah.
talking. Why is it that radio stations want to do so much talking? I mean, if I wanted to talk, I wouldn't have the radio on, would I?
I know when I'm driving and what have you, I'm still working, so when I'm driving, if I don't like the song, I don't just listen to it. I'm going to find what I like on there, and when they talk or a commercial, I'm going to find something else.
I change it to the next one.
I understand the weather and everything. I got a hold on it that day.
What station would you generally, what kind of music would you listen to?
I have like Sunny 92, KZ 106, the local 96.9, I think it is.
96.9 is pretty good.
Yeah, and
So you're a little bit of hard rock.
oh, I mean, I grew up the Stones, the Beatles, the Four Tops. It just goes on and on. Beach Boys. I just loved them all. It was a fun time with good music, and it's still around, isn't it?
They say that, oh yeah, especially on 106.5, that's what they play.
They're kind of getting repetitive on the same songs, and when they did like that 500 there at the Memorial Day, they've got a huge category of great music, but they don't play it.
They need to play more of what we heard during that era.
That's
when we
right.
were, and it didn't have to be the top 20.
No,
it could have been the backside
That's
of
right.
the
So
album.
many good ones. Have you got a phone? We might ought to call them.
I've tried. They won't listen. They just want to talk.
See, we could say 2 out of 2 people want to change.
They would be better if they would stick with just playing songs.
Yes, sir.
They wouldn't have to advertise for you to listen.
No, that's
You'd
right.
be listening.
That's true.
Then they could throw in a commercial every now and then. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But I guess that's why people do that serious radio.
all
But
this.
I just can't seem to want to. I don't want another subscription, man. I hate subscriptions.
Goodness. Yeah, there's a lot of it out there.
Well, there is. I mean,
My
subscribe
goodness.
to this, subscribe to that, subscribe to that.
Isn't it funny? I remember it brought me back. I recall at night, back in the 60s, we'd listen to WLS out of Chicago because you could get it on AM, and it would come in at night. Now, that was something.
Now, so would you go to sleep with it on or what? Or just sort of?
I don't recall. It was mainly when we were all hanging out doing something or what have you. We'd find it on the radio, WLS out of Chicago. I can't remember the number, it doesn't matter. And then, of course, down here in Jet Fly out of Chattanooga. Yeah. And I also like country. When I was doing a lot of more mowing, I like country because it kept you kind of going good.
Country Western. Yeah, I like country Western.
Of course, now they kind of call it Nashville pop.
Yeah,
And,
I don't
it's
know
not
why
really
they do that.
But anyhow, loved Johnny Cash and all of them back then.
Waylon Jennings?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
You can't beat Waylon Jennings.
My gosh, it
You
was
can do
just,
whatever you want to. You can't beat Waylon Jennings.
there were some good ones. There really were. Mhm. But music's just a good way to pass the day. when
Music's
you're
a
by
good way to
yourself.
make you keep from being dramatic. I bet you're not a big into sad music.
Oh, I like, we enjoy some nice soft music that just feel good. But no, not
I
real
mean,
sad.
early 70s.
Yeah, I don't even know some of the eras, but just over the years, there's always been, slow songs that just sound good. Yeah.
I had Baroque on before you come in.
Did you?
Yeah, and I turned it off right when Gwen come in. So I like some Baroque too. That's pretty good to
Goodness.
calm you down.
Yeah. Yeah, instrumentals are good. We like that Martin Loeffler from, Dire Straits. But
Oh,
he
yeah.
just has some
Yeah.
instrumentals that are
You know,
great.
Dire Straits, they'd have a big hit about every 5 years, wouldn't they?
Yes, sir. That first one on MTV
Oh,
was the
golly,
video.
that's such a good song,
Was
wasn't it?
that not a classic?
Oh, that was a classic.
My
Money
good-
for nothing and your chicks for free.
Ed said it. But what they had to do, they had to change that.
Well, they had the bass. The bass was real heavy on that
Yes,
song
sir.
too. It was a good
I'm
song.
glad you remember that.
Oh, I
too.
remember. Yeah, we used to hang out at. That's when they used to get the speakers out of the back of the trunk and set them up on.
Oh, big. So, yes.
Yeah, I never had any of those, but I
didn't
remember
either.
they'd go buy those Alpine
My goodness.
radio things, and I never was big into that stuff. I just liked the music, and it didn't have to sound good to me.
It just
I could
sound,
fill
yeah.
the blanks in. you know.
Yes, sir.
So, what's your biggest hobby right now? Would you say,
Doors.
Doris?
I love it every day, love it every evening. And, but really, I don't have, I wouldn't mind getting back into just amateur sports car racing. And I did
What
that.
kind of cars?
I love open wheel, but autocrossing is one event that you can just kind of take your,
What do you mean open wheel? Is that like at Brainerd Speedway where they had the 8 seconds or something?
oh, that's a dragster.
Dragster, yeah.
Yeah, these are like Formula One, Indy cars, open wheel. And they don't have a closed-in body. It's a single-seater, and they're lightweight and can be powerful. But I did autocrossing for several years, and the last car I had, I started with a 240Z, a Datsun 240Z. I actually won the Tennessee championship in my class.
Is that right?
And then my cousin Ronald and I got an Opel GT. Are you familiar with that? Looks like a poor man's Corvette. It was like a 69, Buick made it, and it shape of a Corvette. And we got that thing down to modified, where it wasn't just a standard street car. You couldn't put it on the street, and competed in that for several years and went to the Nationals several years. So
Well, those were fun days, weren't they?
for me, it was really nice. And that's why I liked it. And Doris did me one of the neatest things I've ever had. She bought me a Mario Andretti racing experience. And went to Atlanta Speedway. It's where they had it. So it was a great, great time. Great, great time. And I got in on what they had one T-shirt. You know, they all have T-shirts. Mario Andretti, the 155-mile-an-hour club.
Yeah.
But they had chips in these cars that you couldn't go much over that.
Restrictors, they call them.
Yeah, but it was a great time. It was an open wheel car, Indy car, and you just were able to do 15, 16 minutes of laps. That is what you paid for. And you can keep going back, but I'd like to go back. And I worked at Road Atlanta for several years back in the late 60s, early 70s, when they had the runoffs down there at Road Atlanta, and got really into watching and being part of the activities. So, corner workers is the first guy that goes to the car. They're all turns, road course. So when they go off road and have a problem, hit, whatever, upside down, you're the one there before the ambulance gets there.
That's like before the emergency, before
Yes,
EMT.
you're as close as you can get to at each turn. They all had stations there. And there was one incident where a Formula car backing up runoffs, and their runoffs were in November. That car came in and there was water had risen because it had been raining. Went upside down, he was underneath. So, I mean, it was fun. I enjoyed it. And I'd love to do, just as pleasure. You know, they have driving schools all around the country.
They got one in Las Vegas, I think. Don't they have a speedway that you can?
Yes,
you
in
can go out-
Birmingham down here.
Oh.
They've got one there, and at Road Atlanta. Different places have schools, but you just have to kind of pay for it and just go enjoy yourself for a while and not worry about speed limits and other cars and somebody on their cell phone and what have you.
I went to Tucson here several months ago, and there's no speed limits. If there are,
Is that right?
It's just like, if you're not going 78 miles an hour, you're making somebody mad. I mean, it's it's as fast as you can go.
Yes, sir. Man.
But these new Teslas, though, have you ever been in one of them?
I drove one, and they're quick.
Did you ever put it in the plaid mode?
I don't know what they call it. It was up actually in Highlands. Doris found this for me also, and it was just a demo. And we had to register for it and whatnot. We went out, and he got on one road, and he said, go ahead and hit it. And we went from like 30 to 82 in no time.
It's like a cartoon, isn't it?
It is.
It's like a cartoon.
It is unreal. But it was a nice car. I mean, I don't know what'll come of them, but
I went in with a guy, and he said, and he got up on North Lee Highway, and he punched that thing, and it was literally like a cartoon. You were just there.
yes, indeed.
And then he turned around and said, I'm going to put it in plaid mode. And the car started lowering itself.
Aerodynamic.
And I thought, we can't go faster than that. And luckily, somebody came up behind us. He said, well, we'll do it later. And I thought, yeah, I ain't.
Yeah, it's kind of like a suction.
It was going to go faster than that.
How about
Because they get that from that Spaceballs. You ever watch Spaceballs?
No, sir.
You need to watch Spaceballs.
I'll be.
It's really good movie.
Thank you.
That's where they get that name, plaid mode.
Okay, I'm unfamiliar with that. There's one other thing I'd like to get back to if my old body can handle it. Horses.
Riding them?
Yeah.
Just
Enjoy them.
Gently.
I owned them for 30-some years. And then for a while did some rodeo and speed events and what have you. So, yeah.
You mean, when you say speed events, you mean like Kentucky Derby type stuff?
Oh, no, sir. At events where, like, barrel racing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And pole bending and keyhole, where you just flat out go as fast as you can, stop on a dime if you can, in a hole and turn around and come back. It's timed events.
Yeah.
Timed events. And then as far as rodeo, it was just bareback horses. And then I did have to try a few bulls. You know, you just have to.
You have to. If you're going to do it, you had to do it.
Almost a rule.
What was that like?
Don't ever do it. No, I'm saying, you wouldn't believe the power, but when you're in the chutes, your knees just get killed almost. And
There's
these
not anything you can do to hang on. I mean, it's not like I'm going to hang on. You're just.
Man, these guys that do it, professional, PBR and whatnot, I mean, they're just top-notch athletes. There's no way around it.
Because they have
bounce.
to hang on.
Yeah. Well, what you do is you put rosin on your glove as well to help hold on to the leather. That's part of
Oh, you put the rosin on to put the glove on to put.
Yeah, you on the outside of your glove, you put the rosin, rock rosin, and then it goes in with the leather, not only with the bull rope, but also with the bareback rigging, which is just a strap.
Boy, that's got to be bad on your back.
Oh, Well, yeah, I'm getting ready to have a rotator cuff here soon.
They say that's not bad at all.
Okay,
That's
let's
what
hope not.
I've known 2 or 3 people that's had that, and it was nothing.
Yeah.
Just a little inconvenience for
Okay, well,
a
I
few
hope
weeks.
that's the case.
That not a one of them's had a problem that I've known.
Good to hear that.
I think I need it too. My shoulder hurts, but I think it's where my cell phone is. And it started hurting right there, and so I moved my cell phone over here, and it stopped. Now it's hurting here.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that's something.
Do you think? When you go down? How did they say? Let's name it Keith Hines. Keith Street.
Okay, so my grandmother gets approached 1955, and they say, would you be willing to help us get this road started? And she said that she would donate that with a stipulation that she could name it. And of course, from that point on, they had to purchase the properties. But fortunately, she was able and willing to help the city try to get improvement for traffic. And so that's how the name, I was the only grandson. Her the niece Mary was at that time never had children. It was us. She viewed my 3 sisters and myself as just hers, and that's what it was too. So that's how that was.
Where does it stop? So, all right, continue.
Oh, that's yeah. So May was able to get that open up for the city to start, and it's actually about 6 miles, I think, the total.
Yeah, I don't know
6 or
where
7.
Keith Street ends.
Actually, it's at Paul Huff.
So Keith Street ends at when you pass Paul Huff, you're supposed to start saying North
Lee
Lee Highway again.
Yes, because North Lee comes in kind of near that junction.
Oh yeah, like at Walmart. That.
Yes, sir. That's it.
You got. That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that was a big undertaking, wasn't it?
All cities, you know.
Was
they're
that all
growing.
kind of swampy in there?
I don't recall it swampy that much. Now, where it started at our place, yeah, it went down to Mouse Creek. They had to build it up. I remember when they started building it up. I was only about 7 or 8, but it was a few years after that before they actually got all the right-of-ways and started actual construction.
So it was a few years later after.
Yes, sir, that it got finished. So, yeah, and, you know, I never really say it to anybody, but every now and then somebody will say, I heard that. And I said, well, that's what it is.
I bet they think, who's this nut saying
Just-
that?
What do you mean? I thought you'd be somebody famous, you know. Like
Well, yeah.
Paul Huff, you know, now that's something.
right, yeah.
By golly, you know, proud to have him.
I've heard some people dispute what he did, but I don't even, they ought to have a plaque somewhere of what it was he did,
Yes.
why they named it after him.
I tell you what, well, he was a war hero.
From
And
here.
From here. And actually, if you get a chance to go down to the museum there in Chattanooga, right by the aquarium, the gold medal down there, or not gold medal, what am I saying? All the military, Paul Huff is one of them. Of course, Coolidge. And then the
Coolidge.
latest is Larry Taylor, you know, the helicopter pilot from Nam. And yes, that museum is great. And the people in there, they're veterans as well. But it's a great place to go, and you can read much more about Paul Huff.
What was it? What was his main thing that he did?
I'm sorry, I don't recall exactly. I just know that we
I
were
remember
fortunate.
it was did something 5 people or something. I can't remember.
And that's the other gentleman down there, the one from Hacksaw Ridge. Yeah, one that never carried any weapons. Yeah, from Chattanooga. Dodds. Oh, gosh, what was his name?
You're not talking about Alvin C. York.
No, sir, but
That
that's
was
another
different.
one. Yeah.
Because wasn't he a. No, he wasn't a conscientious objector, was he? Was he?
No, sir. I cannot remember the guy's name from Lookout Mountain. That's where he was from, but he went in and pulled up or helped lower 75 men down a cliff. and he never carried a weapon. He would not do it. But Hacksaw Ridge is the name of the movie based on his life.
Clint Eastwood, was he in Hacksaw Ridge?
I don't recall him being in that. Sorry.
He had one. I think he came out with a movie called Hacksaw Ridge. Desmond Doss.
Thank you. I was saying, Doc, I was getting, see, I had the D in there.
That's what we got Gwen on.
Thank you, Gwen, very much.
You know, you never know what the future's going to be and what something's going to be named after. And you know, we're not as big on names as the older people were. I mean, these people you came from, they had what do they call those things?
Stamp of some kind?
Yeah, but what do you call that?
A seal?
A seal, but that other thing, they're like their flag or the emblem or
Coat of
crest,
arms?
a crest.
Oh, crest.
They'd have crest. I mean, names was something.
Yeah, we have our Keith family. That's our crest.
That's the crest.
It's upside down for you, but this is the Keith family. And like I
Now,
said,
is it upside down because it's supposed to be for you to see and not for others? Is that the theory?
I hadn't thought about it.
Can
But
you
that's
get that Keith Street?
That's actually our wedding band. Doris has one, and I've got that. That's our wedding.
Where did crest start? Was that Scottish?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Or at least our Keith family crest is, and the Johnstons have some too.
Now, would you say this?
Oh, yeah, and this is Doris's. So that's both of them.
Get
Yeah.
that, Glenn. I'm going to say I've got it upside down.
I just put the Keith at top, and that's all.
So, yeah, people are bigger into names than we are now, and that's probably something significant about that.
It is, and it's, well, like I'm saying, that Keith family castle that's been around for, all you have to do is Google it. Keith family castle. And it's called Dunnantar. And it's just up above Aberdeen, Scotland, right before it goes kind of west, the island. And it's just right up in there, out on a point. It's kind of run down in a sense, but it's been there a long time.
Were the Scots? Where did they come from? Were they part of the Vikings, or?
You know, I had never really heard. That's a good question.
I think they were part of the. Maybe were the. That interests me, but it's so complicated. I can't. And you know, I guess we all came from Adam and Eve, so I guess it's.
And then we just spread out.
We just spread out all over
Yes,
the world.
sir. Unreal. That's a lot of steps. That's a lot of steps.
So where did what did your father do?
He was actually, when I was growing up, he worked at Robert Shaw Controls there in Knoxville, right by UT. And he worked there for years. And then when we moved to Ashtabula, I'm not sure exactly what he did there. We were there just a couple of years, 2 or 3, and then moved to Clinton. And at that time, that was the early 60s, and he worked for a company called Food and Machinery Corporation. It was a government company, nerve gas. They made nerve gas. And then, yeah, it was interesting. He said, it's pretty lethal. It definitely one drop in your history. But after that, he actually moved to Jeffersonville, Indiana, and went to work for Indiana Army Ammunition Plant. And that's where he retired from. So he was kind of into all that, where his brother was a dentist, his other brother was an attorney, his sister was a nurse, and on like that. But he was the youngest. And he worked on the railroad for a while, but he also got into utilities, electric. And that's when he came to Cleveland, and he lived with his uncle, Vastine Stickley, which is Central Drugs, which started there at Craig Mile, right downtown. The Craig Mile building,
Yeah.
you know, on the corner of, what would that
Yeah.
be? Second and Ocoee. That's where Vastine was a pharmacist.
At Central rug at the time?
Yeah, that's
They probably
started that.
probably had soda jerks.
They did, actually. And then, so he lived with Vastine and Mildred Stickley, right, just not far from downtown. And he met my mom here in town, and that's how that got started. He actually put in the power there out near Riceville. He remembers that. Mm-hmm. He did that. And
I bet he worked with Marvin Gill.
I wonder. I don't know. He was also in the railroad, like I say, because his father was. His father was. And he was also my grandfather, May husband, James Ralph Stamper. Mm-hmm. He came back from the war in WW1, he was in charge of 77 men, I think is what his letter to my grandmother said. He was a lieutenant there that brought him back, and then he got started with the hydroelectric. He was helped with up here at Ocoee, but he also was going back and forth to Mexico, which I can't imagine, driving from here to there. But he did that several times, and one time in the newspaper article, he was stopped by bandits in Mexico.
Real bandits.
Bandits, Mexico. They liked his ring. They were either going to cut it off or he was going to give it to him. He kept his finger. He needed it. But anyhow, I never got to meet him. He was died before I was even started.
Is that right?
And then also another interesting thing. My Uncle French that lived with my grandmother and aunt there at the house was a mule trader and livestock trader along with his father, M.L. Beard.
Was there, wasn't that barn there prior to them building those apartments?
Oh, there were two mule barns there, actually. There were two
made of thick lumber.
Oh, huge. And back in WW1, French helped obtain mules from Cleveland and this area, and through a livestock mule dealer in Atlanta, shipped them over to Italy to help with going up the mountains with the weapons to fight there in Africa and then later in Italy in the Alps there. So
to fight against
World
War II.
In one. In one. So here's French. He's always dealt with mules and whatnot, and he got this. But being a contractor for the government, they made him go to Clemson Agricultural College. There he got his degree in farrier, a blacksmith. Otherwise,
farrier's a horseshoer, right?
Yes, sir. So we have the little where it gave his grades and everything from Clemson Agricultural College there in Clemson, South Carolina. Not even knowing that until we started going through all this stuff. That's where my son ended up getting his chemical engineering.
Now, what are the odds?
We never
What
knew
are
it.
the odds?
We never knew it. But good old French, he was such a neat guy. I remembered him just a little bit. He actually, his study was where our bedroom is downstairs now, and he stayed in the bedroom, which is now Doris's dressing room. So he was just neat, a bachelor.
What's that house look like inside it? When would you just say
Why
it was
don't you
what,
just
18?
come over and see?
I'll do it sometime.
Please. And Gwen, you too.
What was that, 1880?
Yes, sir, right about that time.
So this house here was built in 1933.
Yes, sir.
So we're talking
70. Oh, wait a minute.
No,
I'm sorry,
see.
50.
53 years earlier.
Yes, sir.
Construction was totally different.
Yes, sir. And Doris's son, Scott, who's a great carpenter and just knows structures, been all through our house, under, over, and sides, everything. But upstairs, he says, you can look down and there's one post all the way down, And it just started, all they did was kind of dig out a little hole at the bottom and then just start the foundation.
They called that King Post construction during
Is that what it
era.
was?
Yeah,
King
and that
Post.
King Post construction with a
You would like that.
with
because-
a King Post construction with balloon framing. In other words, the rest of the structure are balloons off of those.
I see.
Something like that. But that's why he can see all the way down.
Yeah, and all the wood in there, all the floors are original. I've had them redone.
What kind of wood?
Oak down and pine up.
I bet that oak is white oak.
Oh, no, sir. About like that.
I mean white.
Oh, white. It's a blonde, I'd call it. Is that sound
It doesn't
right,
have-
Doris? Blonde?
The oak we get now has a reddish tint.
I see.
And you can't get that white oak like that
Yeah.
anymore. So that's what you have.
I call it a blonde or
Yeah.
whatever, but yes, sir. And then all the shiplap, all the walls except downstairs are the plaster on that sucker, and then the batting and lathing behind that. But we cut out a 14 by 14 for a heat and air system. You can't hardly pick it up, and all it is 14 by 14, but it's about that.
Oh, it's
thick.
probably got lathing and maybe
Yeah,
some,
and that's behind it.
maybe some chicken wire at the
How
time.
about, I keep looking. Do you think they've got some money
Probably.
back there? We
Well,
always heard up the stairway.
It might be Confederate money.
Well,
Remember
it's still
Granny
money.
Clampett had some Confederate money she was trying to cash in?
Wasn't that something? I love that show. That was great.
And Jethro was going to be a brain surgeon.
Also, a 007 spy.
Double naught seven, yeah,
you
double
remember
naught
that?
spy.
And, yeah. I love it.
Remember when he was going to, he invented the car phone and they got the bankers out there and they said, why'd you stop? And he said, well, it's as far as the cord would reach.
I love stuff like that. I mean,
What shows did you
Well,
grow
that
up
was
on?
one of them. Yeah, that was one of them. And, Ren 1010, Roy Rogers, and things such as that. Gunsmoke.
Gunsmoke.
What else was
My
there?
Three Sons, was that too old for you? Or that?
I watched some of it. It was okay.
Well, there's a period when you're about 15 to on, you don't really pay attention to shows. But those shows before you were 14 or 15 become so important to you
That's
later,
right.
don't they?
They do.
So I don't remember Ren 1010.
Oh, and Three Stooges, things like that.
Oh, I love
Just-
the Three Stooges.
The first Curly was the only
Oh,
one
he
I
was.
liked.
Well, Shemp pulled it off though.
Yeah,
it
he
was
did.
okay.
It was all
but
right.
there wasn't. He died at I think he was only like 33 in that. When he was doing Three Stooges.
Oh.
But boy, they were funny.
They were just silly.
Amos
but
and
funny.
Andy was funnier.
Yeah, yeah.
It was hilarious.
Oh, man. There was just good programs. There's good programs now. There's so many. My gosh.
Oh, I know.
It's unreal.
What do you have? Roku TV or what?
We do have now, and we just got into the system, all the other stuff
Yeah.
that we just kind of limited on that, but kind of go back to the same ones over.
But
and
you
over.
can get on YouTube right from the TV.
I
through
never
that.
tried it, but I need to, because when you told me what you were on, I have yet to get on there to see some of your previous.
Yeah, Roku,
people.
you can just go right on to YouTube and then type in the discussion and you can subscribe and it don't
How
cost
about
nothing.
that? Yeah, I'm so proud for you and Gwen to do all this to help this area. Just learn a little bits of this and that. What knowledge and what use it is, I don't know, but some people,
Well,
I hope they like it.
I think that what it does is it, more than information, somehow or another, it portrays the person's personality. And during this time, you can get a sense of their personality. And I think that's what people like. If I have a huge informative thing, they don't seem to watch it as much.
I see.
The ones that get watched the most are just the general, random conversations. Boy, this is a
Old.
old document.
I'll try to help hold
What is this?
This is where my great-great-great-grandfather, Stephen Beard, was appointed first lieutenant and signed, look at that leather,
Oh,
signed by Andrew Johnson,
Andrew Johnson.
governor, Tennessee, and this was about 2 or 3 months before Lincoln was assassinated.
Boy, this is old.
I love that old leather.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a seal. And that's some of it there.
So,
This has been in our home, of course.
and see this fancy writing.
Isn't that something? And his saddle, his gun, and his one stirrup, or not stirrup, but his, that was about all he had. He had one spur, and that I never did see the other one. But the old rifle had the bayonet, and my sister has it. She wanted to have that from years ago. But Stephen Beard came back here and had his son was M.L. Beard. They had the seed and livestock. And another thing with that, French and M.L. spent time in Oregon buying livestock to bring back to Cleveland way back when. So
Wonder how they got them here.
had to be, there weren't many trains.
Maybe.
I don't know the exact time. I know we have letters from them, from the Portland, I think it was, from the hotel where they were staying. And I came, you know, they were funny about not dating a lot of stuff, especially newspaper articles. They would cut out the article, but they
And not the
wouldn't have
date. Isn't that so bizarre?
I wish they would have.
And date pictures. You should always date a picture.
So true. But I thought that was so interesting to have this.
And you can tell this is the real McCoy. Especially can this metal tube.
Isn't it
That
something?
thing's older than we are. You know, back to Keith Street. What made them feel okay with asking for
That's a
a
good
mile of road?
You know, I've never really heard their side of it other than it was pretty much a must to get it open in that area.
Was she known for her philanthropy?
Well, Carrie certainly was, and Mae kind of followed suit too with just helping people. You know, they would come to the house, and if they were able to help them, they would. And Carrie certainly did that before it was an organization or a certain service that they call it.
Yeah.
And everybody knew it, and they would know they could count on her.
What were some of the things that she?
That Carrie,
Yeah.
well, she was like with the Daughters of American Revolution. She stayed in those organizations and garden clubs and different clubs here in town. And she had one, it was in the newspaper where friends were coming over in the fall and they were talking about how they'd love to come to the house because in the fall, our trees there, which are still standing, magnificent, just lit up the sky. And she just enjoyed having people over. And of course, back then, there wasn't a whole lot going on around town.
I guess it was very sparse.
Yeah.
What would have been? You wouldn't have had the village mall. You wouldn't have had the courthouse as we know it. I guess you'd had the old
I
courthouse.
love the old
Yeah.
courthouse. You don't recall that, do you?
I know.
Oh, man.
Don't recall it.
It was beautiful.
It burned, right?
No, sir. It was, they felt like it'd take too much money to bring the heat and air up to date.
There was a brother-in-law somewhere.
I don't know what kind of structure you call that. Back then it was magnificent. Now it's just concrete, basically. I mean, it's a fine, it does purpose, but yeah,
You
it
look
was
at
a
some of
beautiful-
these old buildings now, and we don't hardly have the equipment to get up there and repair something, and they built it. Now you
Yes.
figure that out.
I know. Look at the Notre Dame there in Paris. How in the world did they bring that back up? And how they built it back then? It's amazing.
Well, if you look at the historical library in Cleveland, and you look at that trim and how a roof's behind the roof, and you figure out how they built it, because I can't.
Yeah, it's so neat. That's another how the Johnsons helped with that. You know, it just
Didn't they give the Craig Miles to
yes,
them?
sir. They sure did. They sure did. And I love all the out on the front there, all the different names. But my gosh, the family members involved Like, yeah, they're just unreal how it come across over the years.
So Carrie was involved in the Daughters of the
American Revolution.
American
Yeah.
Revolution.
Yeah, I think is this. Yes, sir. That's one of the documents there, and then
So,
Yeah.
oh,
again, that was something.
Daughters of the American Revolution, 1776. See, we look at this as just a historical document, but that was a big deal. These people, literally, they could have been imprisoned if
Yes,
had
sir.
they have lost. It
That's
wasn't
right.
flippant.
So true. So true.
I mean,
Yeah.
they could have said, "Nope. Which ones of y'all fought against the war? We're gonna."
There you go.
I mean,
I love these old things, and again, I was just saying that I hadn't pulled a lot of this out to even look at until Lee University asked us to be on the historic tour in 2018. Ended up being their last one, and I thought, I knew this, and there was just trunks full of stuff. And I started going through some. It's endless almost. My gosh, we have receipts from Carrie on her phone bill, $1.25. We have insurance from Tom Jones, his father Grady, and Grady's father sold the insurance at that
hold
time.
it. Wait a minute. We've hit something there. Grady Jones was one of my best friends.
Grady,
Go Grady, yeah,
Tom Jones's dad,
yeah. Tom and Larry.
Tom and Larry.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Larry, and I don't know. When,
I
of
hadn't
course,
either. But Grady was one of my best friends.
Isn't he?
Yeah, he was 92 or 93 when he died.
Do you remember when he was up here at Life Care?
Oh,
living there,
do
and
I?
They catch him out on the street.
He was
going to-
He was driving to Shoney's. I went up there to visit him one time, and he had his wheelchair stuck on the extension cord.
They probably tried to lasso him.
Well, let me
really.
tell you this before. This is true story. So when he was about 90, he said, "Dee, I want to go to this place in, I think, Lexington or Lawrenceburg, Tennessee,
Really?
where it's a state park, where they have a state park owned restaurant and a Sunday brunch."
Well, he was ready.
And he said, "I've been there before and I really enjoyed it and I want to go back." So I took him. And so we're driving up through there.
My goodness.
We're driving up through there, and his daughter-in-law, I guess it was Tommy's wife
Yeah.
or somebody, called and said, "Do you have Grady?" And I said, "Yeah, I got him right here in the car." And she said, "Well, he's kind of got some dementia." And I looked at him, and I said, "He seemed fine to me."
Yeah.
And so I handed the phone to him, and he said something like, "I'm a grown man." Anyway, we stayed the night in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee.
goodness.
This was after Francis had died.
Yes, sir.
So isn't that
Yeah.
odd?
Yeah.
I've got a picture of him in there.
He
But
was
so tell me about when you were starting to tell me about Tommy.
Well, I was saying that, Tom's dad, Grady, and Grady's dad, I'm pretty
Grady's
sure.
dad.
Yeah, I think, and it could have been Grady because this was like in 1903 or so, insurance on the house. And there's the documents from at what they had. I don't know if
It was Francis's dad.
Is that
She
who-
had the insurance
I
company.
see. I
And when
didn't
Grady
know.
married her, because Grady never was a serious guy
That's
at
true.
all.
Yeah.
He was a
jokester.
jokester.
Yeah.
What'd they call that insurance? HL something?
Hudson.
Hudson.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, Hudson.
I remember, that's right. I remember where they had the documents for the insurance. That's right. Hudson. Sounds like, yeah. Small world.
It's a small world. You can't
Yeah.
talk about anybody.
No. But
So-
you help out, don't you?
Yeah, I have some things I remember real vivid for some reason. I don't know exactly why.
You
Grady
like-
used to come in here and read the newspaper.
I'll
That
read
way he
mine.
didn't have to buy it, and he'd read.
I swear. Yeah, man.
You know, before he died, I said, Grady, you scared of dying? He said, nope. And I said, why not? He said, everybody that I know has already passed away,
Oh,
and I've had a good life, and really don't have that much in common with anybody anymore.
how about that?
Isn't that
Well,
something?
that's kind of sad too.
Well,
Yeah.
he didn't.
But
He
kept
didn't
on.
mean it that way. He
I
meant it
see.
as
I'm comfy.
Yeah, yeah.
I never knew of a Peugeot, but that's what he used to like driving, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, little diesel car.
Yeah, my
He
gosh.
drove that car everywhere.
He did. Up to Ducktown or wherever. Always. Yeah.
Grady Jones.
Yes, sir. My goodness.
So what else is we need to cover? Keith, it's been really. You're a real pleasant person.
Well, thank you. So are you as well.
You remind me of my grandmother's demeanor.
Really?
Yeah, she had a calming demeanor like you.
Yeah. You know, as we're young, we've got all these people up on that totem pole. They're way up there and you're way down here. All of a sudden, our age, we're getting way up there. But all you have are just the wonderful memories.
That's
You know,
That's
and
all
you
it
just-
boils down to.
Yeah, and when you're little, you don't think a thing about it. You're like, well, they'll be there forever.
Mm-hmm.
But all those times, you remember them so well. How it was just wonderful times.
And why you remember specific things is
Yeah.
beyond me. Because some things don't have any significance.
That's true. They're just enjoyable.
But you just
whatever.
have, and some things you just remember that for some weird reason. Wonder what happens before that, or during that, or after that made you remember that specific 30 seconds.
Hey, you're right.
Because you can't remember what you're wearing, you can't remember where you're going, what you're riding in, but you can remember what somebody. Like I remember that about Grady,
See there?
and just that little. And I don't remember what motel we stayed in. I don't remember
matter.
what day we went.
Man, memories are fun.
That's all we got, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And then you do have some things that bring your memories back. But like I said, a lot of this I hadn't really seen.
I hope that a great grandson or daughter years from now can go back and play these podcasts or these episodes and hear us talk about these things and kind of get a sense of your personality or my personality.
There you go.
And what's that worth?
Good question.
I mean, it's
For
worth
us, we're enjoying each other's conversation, and
Yeah, and for somebody that's a relative, it may be heart-wrenching to them to really to look back. And how would you like to have some of these, like the
Johnny,
Yeah.
with the history.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
or
it's-
and just his personality?
Yeah.
You know, everybody's got a tweak or a twerk or a thing that they do that makes them recognizable.
that's right.
Yeah, I'm
That's
always
right.
pulling on my shirt. I
How
can't help
about
it.
that? No
That's
big
just
deal.
my quirk.
No big deal. None at all. But you're right. It would have been nice to have some more audio and video. Sure would have.
So, what's up for next week?
Just work as far as I know. Oh, Bill and I used to laugh. We used to say, older people, all they do is talk about their appointments, what's coming, what's gone, and different. So the only thing I know, Tuesday I have 2 appointments. Other than that,
Is it
Just work.
doctor's appointments or the better insurance you have, the more doctor's appointments? you
See
have.
there, that's what it is. But it's keeping me alive. It is. Doris was so funny because I never went to doctors because one thing, I didn't really have insurance for a while after Bambi and I separated. So anyhow, right after getting insurance, and I knew Doris, it was in November, I had to go for a checkup because I got involved in insurance then.
Yeah, right.
So I go in for a checkup, And I'm sitting there, and I'm just talking to the doctor here, and he was checking, and he said, "You're going to the ER." And I said, "Why?" "You're at 200, your pulse." He loaded me up, took me in, and that's when I found out I had AFib. But Doris didn't know it. She was working at a...
Did you feel funny?
No. I probably have been having it for some time, not ever really knowing it. But now doctors find these things out, don't they? Unless you took a stroke and find out.
Well, how'd you get the 200? That's what isn't it supposed to be like 55 or something?
Yeah, resting is,
Yeah.
Doris is usually at 55 in the mornings. I'm in the 60s now, but
Yeah.
medicine.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting here just like with you and I talking to the doctor, and you just, you know, how they'll check you. And since then, I've been in great hands. But Doris didn't even know it because she was working in Chattanooga, and she called and said, "Yo, where are you? You home?" "No, in the hospital." Poor lady. Of all times, she only helps a few times a year, and that was one of the
Boy,
days.
you look healthy.
I feel pretty darn good. Doris is real good about making sure I stay on
Your
a
skin
good path.
color's real good. I feel good.
Yeah. What
There's
else can
nothing
you-
wrong.
There you go. What do you mean you have to repair stuff?
Some
I
people
do
just
want
run
it.
a little. Some people just run a little different.
I guess.
Some people's bodies are a little different, just like people's personalities, and you don't need to tinker with it a whole lot.
Good point, Tinker. Yeah. Oh, me.
Keith, I appreciate it, buddy.
Hey, mine.
I really enjoyed this.
It has been.
Let's
good.
have a toast to Grady Jones.
Oh, good point.
Grade A
And Tom.
Jones.
By golly, I miss Tom. I talked to Deborah the other day.